Hey everyone, dear friends, this is Drake on the Crime Story Diaries channel. Today we'll be examining a horrifying case, so I invite you to watch the video. Don't forget to leave your comments and likes. Thailand is a country with an incredibly rich cultural heritage and a fascinating history. This tropical paradise attracts countless travelers throughout the year who seek to enjoy the stunning landscapes and pristine nature. However, in 2019, a lone tourist named Miriam Beelte decided to interrupt her business trip to see the famous white sandy beaches of Thailand with her own eyes. During one of the excursions, the girl tragically died. When the investigation began, the police quickly realized that Miriam's death was not an accident. Later, law enforcement officers found footage from surveillance cameras that helped uncover the chilling truth. Our story takes place on one of the Thai islands called Koh Chang. It is located in the Gulf of Thailand, which washes the eastern coast of the central part of the country. The population of Koh Chang is approximately 7,000 people. Despite the fact that the island is in close proximity to the capital Bangkok, it is not as popular among tourists as other resorts. The mainstay of Koh Chang's economy is fishing, which provides the main income for local residents. However, this does not prevent the friendly islanders from warmly welcoming travelers. Koh Chang is especially attractive to those wanderers who seek authenticity and desire to immerse themselves in the real life of Thais, to learn their customs and traditions. In March 2019, 26-year-old German Miriam Beelte, who was on a solo trip to Thailand during March and April, visited the island of Koh Chang. The girl was born and raised in the German city of Hildesheim. From her school years, she was known for her diligence and extraordinary abilities. After graduating from school, Miriam entered the University of Hanover, where she studied mechanical engineering for 5 years and obtained a master's degree. Thanks to her knowledge and skills, the girl found a decent job quite quickly, starting her career as an engineer in a small design company. In mid-2018, she changed her place of work, moving to a larger firm that specialized in automotive manufacturing, where she took the position of a design engineer. At the time of her trip in 2019, Miriam lived in her hometown of Hildesheim with her parents, as she was not in a serious relationship at that time. The girl devoted almost all her time to work, and working for an international company, she often went on business trips abroad. At the end of March 2019, Miriam's employer sent her on another business trip. This time, the engineer had to fly to Southeast Asia to conduct negotiations with several suppliers. The girl herself loved to travel, but a business trip is always not the same as a real vacation. Therefore, this time, Miriam decided to combine work with leisure and stay in Thailand for a few extra days. She had heard a lot about the incredible white sandy beaches, turquoise waters, and rich history of this country, so she dreamed of seeing all this beauty with her own eyes. Having completed her business meetings, the girl boarded a plane and headed to Bangkok, intending to explore Thailand on her own. Traveling alone is always dangerous, but Miriam had experience with such trips and knew how to behave in a foreign country to keep herself safe. She followed simple rules: not to go out alone after dark, to keep valuables with her, and to be wary of strangers. And although the girl always felt safe during her travels, she understood that a young woman traveling solo should be prepared. Unfortunately, we never know what is on the minds of other people and whether they have bad intentions. However, Miriam did not allow fear and doubts to overshadow her desire to fully enjoy the Thai sun. Shortly after arriving in Bangkok, the girl went on an excursion to the city of Pattaya in the southeast of the country, near which the island of Koh Chang is located. On Sunday, April 7, 2019, 26-year-old Miriam Beelte bought a ticket for the ferry and headed to the island, planning to spend a few hours there and return to Pattaya in the evening. Her plans were simple: to taste fresh local seafood, visit ancient temples scattered around the island, and immerse herself in the coastal atmosphere. Around noon, Miriam arrived on Koh Chang and immediately rented a motorcycle, one of the most popular modes of transport in Thailand. The girl planned her route in advance using Google Maps and set off on a tour. Among her chosen locations was a white stone temple located on top of a hill. This shrine is known for housing a footprint of Buddha and is very important to Buddhists. The temple is situated in a picturesque place, and from the top of the hill, a breathtaking view opens up. Miriam liked such locations where she could be alone and enjoy cultural monuments without the noisy crowd of tourists. However, the girl could not even imagine what fate awaited her in this place. Having reached the desired spot, Miriam left her rented motorcycle at the foot of the hill, waved amicably to the vendor from the flower kiosk, and headed towards the temple. To get to the shrine, it was necessary to overcome a rather steep climb, which only physically fit people can handle. The surveillance camera recorded how the girl climbed the stone stairs to the monument. Usually, the way there and back takes about 5 minutes. Miriam reached the temple, but no one saw her again. It seemed strange because the stone stairs were the only way leading back from the hill. There were simply no other descents. Miriam's rented motorcycle was still parked below near the flower kiosk. Despite the beauty of the temple, there were no other interesting places on top of the hill that would be worth lingering for. The main question was why the girl stayed there for so long and why she did not come down. When traveling alone, Miriam often disappeared from social networks for several hours, immersing herself in reality. However, when on April 7th, the day turned into night and the girl still did not get in touch, her loved ones in Germany began to worry, fearing that something bad might have happened to her. The next morning, on Monday, April 8th, a young Thai tourist decided to take a walk along a secluded path leading to the white stone temple with the Buddha's footprint. Halfway up, he noticed a small ravine on the side of the stairs. Something strange caught his attention, so the man came closer to take a look. It turned out to be the body of a young woman with light skin. She was dead, found lying between 2 huge boulders in a pool of her own blood. The body was covered with old branches, leaves, and other debris. The tourist immediately informed the authorities about the terrible find. Soon, law enforcement officers arrived at the scene. The deceased turned out to be the German Miriam Beelte, who had disappeared the day before. After examining the girl's body, the police concluded that her death was not an accident. She could not have simply slipped, fallen into the ravine, and crashed. Miriam was completely naked. One of her legs was broken, and numerous injuries were visible on her head and face, as if inflicted by a hard, heavy object, such as a brick or a rock. Unfortunately, it soon became known that before her death, the girl had been sexually assaulted. However, what exactly happened to the tourist remained a mystery at that time. The stone temple of Buddha had only one entrance and exit, which were under the surveillance of security cameras. It was they who recorded Miriam climbing the hill. It soon became clear that an unknown young man was following the girl up the stairs, and he immediately fell into the number of main suspects. It did not take the police long to establish his identity. The video footage showed how this man drove up to the foot of the hill on a motorcycle and parked. Then he exchanged a few words with the vendor from the flower kiosk and bought a small bouquet of marigolds from him. After that, the stranger headed towards the temple. The flower vendor saw the young man walking quickly after Miriam, and sometime later, the same stranger came down the stone stairs alone. He was wearing dark clothes, and the vendor thought that the man's pants and jacket were wet and stained with something light. He asked the suspicious guy if everything was all right, to which he waved his hand and replied that he had just fallen. The vendor had bad suspicions, so he tried to remember the young man's appearance and, just in case, wrote down the make and number of his motorcycle. And it was not in vain, because after the discovery of Miriam Beilte's body, the flower vendor passed all the collected information to the police. Soon, the investigators found out that the motorcycle was registered in the name of Ranakorn Romruin. 24-year-old Ranakorn Romruin was a local resident of Ko Chang Island. The young man lived alone, had a small boat and a motorcycle. Ranakorn worked as a beach cleaner. During the day, he rode along the coast in a boat, collecting garbage from the water, and also cleaned up on the shore. Fellow villagers described him as a quiet and calm guy who liked to be alone. After work, he usually returned home, turned on the TV, and sipped beer. It would seem that Ranakorn led a typical life for his age. However, few people knew that the guy had his own dark secrets that he carefully concealed. The young man suffered from a serious drug addiction and regularly used, rarely being in his right mind. The very next day after the murder of Miriam Beelte, when Ranakorn Romruan returned home from work in the evening, he was detained and arrested. The suspect was taken to the police station for interrogation, and after a few hours, he confessed to everything. The case of the murder of the German tourist was solved within 24 hours after her death. Ranakorn said that on the morning of April 7th, on Sunday, he woke up and instead of breakfast, drank 2 mugs of beer and 2 shots of hard liquor. But this seemed not enough for the guy. He was drawn to drugs. He took a dose, got on his motorcycle, and went for a ride around the island. It ended at the foot of the temple, where he first saw Miriam climbing the stone stairs. It was then that an evil thought flashed through Ranakorn's head about the pretty, light-skinned girl. A drunken imagination painted dirty pictures, and he decided to act. Noticing a flower kiosk nearby, the young man bought a small bouquet of marigolds, hoping that the pretty stranger would appreciate his gift. With flowers in his hands, he began to climb the stairs after Miriam. Having caught up with her, Ranakorn tried to start a conversation. The girl felt uncomfortable when the guy gave her flowers and then offered to have sex right on the hill, not reaching the temple. Miriam refused. She found herself alone with a stranger in a deserted place, and he was asking extremely inappropriate questions. The girl got scared, turned around and rushed to escape, but Ranakorn was not going to accept the refusal and chased after her. In a moment, he caught up with the victim, grabbed her, and dragged her into the thicket of the forest. Miriam screamed and struggled, but no one heard. No one could come to her aid. I will not describe all the details of this terrible crime. I will only say that when the rapist finished his dirty deed, Miriam managed to break free from his hands. She started running down the slope of the hill, trying to get as far away from the monster as possible. Then, another sinister thought flashed through Ranakorn's mind: to catch up with the girl and finish her off. Otherwise she would escape, and he would be put behind bars. Jumping to his feet and brushing himself off, he rushed in pursuit. Unfortunately, Miriam, gripped by panic and horror, slipped on the descent and injured her leg. Ranakorn caught up with her, grabbed a huge rock lying nearby, and began pounding the girl on the head. Miriam died on the spot from the injuries she received. Ranakorn made a mistake when hiding the body. He dragged the dead girl higher up the hill, threw her among the rocks, and covered her slightly with old leaves, branches, and garbage. However, the corpse was still visible directly from the stairs leading to the temple. Therefore, the very next morning, Miriam was found by a Thai tourist who was heading to the top. After committing the crime, Ranakorn returned home, immediately washed his bloodied clothes, and then lay down on the sofa, turned on the TV, and smoked a whole pack of cigarettes. It was his last evening at large, because less than a day later, the guy was arrested. Having confessed, he took part in the reconstruction of the crime, detailing the last minutes of Miriam Beelte's life. During the investigative experiment, the suspect's head was covered with a bag to hide his identity from prying eyes. The Thai authorities closely followed the progress of the investigation. Just 3 months after the tragedy, the trial began. The main evidence of Ranakorn's guilt was the footage from surveillance cameras, the testimony of the flower kiosk vendor, and the defendant's own confession. The guy never personally apologized for what he had done, but in court, his mother asked for forgiveness on behalf of her son. The woman said that she and Ranakorn lived separately, and she had no idea what he was doing. Her son's deed shocked her to the core, so the mother herself urged the court to punish him with the full severity of the law. The highest measure of punishment for murder in Thailand is the death penalty. Ranakorn's mother admitted that she was afraid to let her son go free because he could repeat his terrible crime and take someone else's life. The woman suggested sentencing him to life imprisonment or even executing him. Ranakorn Romruan pleaded guilty to the murder of Miriam Beelte. For this cruel and heinous crime, he was sentenced to death. It is known that the murderer is still in the death row cell, awaiting the day of his execution. The residents of Koh Chang Island were shocked and stunned by the news of the death of the 26-year-old German tourist. Thailand as a whole is considered a very peaceful country, so the fact that a local resident behaved so cruelly and disrespectfully towards a guest caused real horror. Such atrocities had never happened on Koh Chang before, so the islanders hope that this story will not affect their future life and will not scare tourists away from visiting the island. The community of Koh Chang rallied to express their condolences to the family of the deceased. People of different ages and occupations came to the place where Miriam's body was found, brought candles, flowers, and wreaths, cried and prayed for the murdered girl, expressing sympathy to her family. It is no secret to anyone that the financial well-being of Thailand largely depends on the tourism industry. Negative incidents of this kind can cause serious damage to the material condition of the whole country. That is why the Thai authorities always try to solve crimes committed against foreigners as quickly as possible. However, unfortunately, there are often cases when information about such tragedies is simply hushed up and not allowed to get into the press. After Ronakorn's sentencing, the local police assured that there were no more bad guys on Koh Chang and only decent and good people remained. The island's residents urged tourists not to be afraid to come here, despite the fact that Koh Chang's reputation has suffered somewhat. Of course, this cannot be compared to how Miriam herself and her family suffered. Miriam Beelte was a bright young woman who was just beginning to live. She was an exemplary worker with grand plans for the future, which unfortunately were not destined to come true. To honor the memory of Miriam Beelte, the University of Hanover, where the girl studied, established a scholarship in her name to support young engineers.